It's Friday, and I'm back with the next in our Fanzine Friday series. Today we're taking a look at The Beholder, number 21. Please stick around. I'm AZ Mountaineer. This is our channel, Old School Rules, where we celebrate the community of old school gamers and grognards who like classic RPGs, miniatures, magazines, and everything that goes with it. Each week on the Fanzine Friday series, I take a fanzine from my collection off the shelf for a closer look. And today, from December of 1980, this is The Beholder, number 21. Hope you enjoy the video. Continuing our look at this fantastic fanzine from the UK, produced by Mike Stoner and Guy Duke. This is The Beholder, number 21, heavy stock, blue cover, regular paper, folded in half. And then I have this cover as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in that printing in just a minute. Let's take a look at our cover. This is Guy Duke's art, and you've got these three acolytes, I'm going to say, standing in front of these rocks, sort of like Stonehenge, and the light of the moon is coming through there. So very, very cool art. This one is packed full of stuff. They call this their Christmas edition. As you can see, there's all kinds of stuff, a lot of small articles in here, and then the Christmas dungeon, which is the AD&D dungeon. We've got our editorial, a note on idea for role-playing, the full list of awards that were given out at Games Day, SET, which is a sci-fi, short sci-fi article, Sylvanus, which is a discussion of a Celtic god for use in chivalry and sorcery. So finally that game gets some paid, well actually I think just one page in here. An article on Traveler, some reviews of new games, Magic Jar, which are new magic items, a discussion of the use of light in your D&D campaign, the Christmas Dungeon by Graham Staplehurst, Chronicle, which is their discussion of their ongoing home campaign, the half-sylph, which would be an NPC or PC race, Monster Summoning, which are their monsters, and then DM's Delight, which has both some new monsters and a couple of new spells. Get myself out of the way because we can see this entire list. There's a huge list of contributors this time. Guy and Mike, of course, Jake Aseard, Trevor Mendham, Alan Bell, Graham Staplehurst, Jon Crane, Martin Henningson, PJ Fereday, Brian H., and Alexander Self, who does some art, and Jonathan White, who does some art as well. Okay, here's our regular cover, the 45 pence. That would have been the first printing. There could have been a 50-55, and then I have this one, which is 60. So here I mentioned, here's the thing that's kind of interesting, and I checked, I have a couple different copies of this reprint, and the contents of this are actually, you'll see in a second, this is the inside pages for number 22. And then if you go to this 60 pence reprint of number 22, the cover's, the right one, and the pages belong to issue number 21. So I'm guessing that they probably had those reprinted at the same time, and somewhere at the print shop they swapped the pages and the covers around and got those incorrect. So be aware of that. If you are picking these up, just be aware, because the table of contents that's there on their editorial page will not match, and it's not the correct contents if you get those. Okay, as they mentioned, they are winding down. There's a sort of orderly transition plan where the 25 will be their final issue that they produce, and someone may be, as they say, taking that over, so they're giving you some information about the subscription. They also mentioned that the price of this is probably going to go up in the new year to be 50 pence per issue if you want to subscribe or get a reprint. So Trevor Mendham has an article on role playing, and he has some thoughts here. And the first thing he says is that he thinks it's hard to be a lawful good character because you'll let people take advantage of you. I mean, I don't think that's true. I just, someday I may do a video and talk a little bit about alignment, which is a very interesting topic, I think, sort of at the theoretical level for D&D. But I always think of the lawful good character as archetype is sort of like Captain America. And I don't think anybody would say Captain America gets taken advantage of, his character, in the Marvel comic book world. There obviously are other examples of that as well. It doesn't mean you're not necessarily, doesn't mean that you're naive. It doesn't mean that you allow people to manipulate you. And it doesn't mean you don't believe in consequences, as far as I would be concerned, in terms of how that alignment should be role played. And of course, the other thing is, you can have some real problems if you get some characters in terms of alignment who are in there trying to play particularly evil characters. And he suggests you consider giving lawful good characters an experience point bonus to compensate them for some reason. And then the other thing that he says is a potential issue is when the character has an extremely high intelligence or wisdom that would be higher than the intelligence or wisdom of the player who's sitting at the table. He guesses that most people, even smart people who are playing D&D, are in the 13 to 14 intelligence range, and so very common to have for example, magic user who's going to be sort of smarter than the actual player. He says it's obviously easier to play, a particularly not smart character, and most people could sort of figure out how to do that, but that can be hard. And so his suggestion, which I think makes sense, is that the DM has to find ways to sort of give the player a little extra information or hint or insight that the character would be expected to have based on that high intelligence or wisdom score, even though the player maybe wouldn't see it or think of it, etc. And I think that makes some sense if your characters your players particularly care about that. Here are the Games Workshop Awards. I'll blow that up a little bit so it's just a little bit easier to see. I won't read all these. You can pause the video if you're curious. But best game, D&D, then Traveler, then Diplomacy. It's interesting. There's best abstract game, best family game. So things like Monopoly was the number one there. Best rules, best electronics game, Space Invaders, by the way, number one. Board games, role-playing games, figure manufacturers, right? So they rank Citadel, then Ral Partha, then Asgard. It's a pretty good showing for Ral Partha considering the magazine and the voters are over there in the UK. And of course, Citadel and Asgard are both homegrown companies that are right there, local. Best historical figures, best range, the Fiend Factory from Citadel, which I'm particularly fond of, the Collector Series from Ral Partha, and then the Spacefarers from Citadel were their favorite minis. Best Wargame Magazine, best Sci-Fi Fantasy Magazine, again a little hometown vote. White Dwarf is number one, Dragon number two, and then Ares, which I think was put up by SPI, comes in at number three. Best Fanzine, particularly interesting to me and probably you. No surprise because we mentioned it last time. The Beholder is first place, followed by Troll Crusher, which is a great fanzine. And I'm still trying to get the first couple of issues of that, so I have a complete collection before I dive into Troll Crusher, but I got most of them. And then the Stormlord, which I think has 10 or 11 issues, and I'm missing a couple of those as well. Best Game Publisher, Inventor, Gary gets first tab for that. Best Personality and Best New Game. Best New Game for 80 was Top Secret, Air War 80, and then Bushido. Anyway, really cool slice of little history, right? Starship Encounter Tables by Jake Aseard. Probably mispronouncing his name, and apologies for that. These are just random tables to sort of roll up different types of starships. The Sylvanus, which is the Celtic demi-god of the woods and nature by Alan Bell, and this is for chivalry and sorcery. And so he just gives some stats and special abilities. That this individual carries a jug which pours forth random magic potions, and then he has a loyal wolfhound that is always with him that is statted out as well. So here's this little, it's not really an article, but it's just a little mention in here that I thought was particularly interesting. So Graham Staplehurst, as you know, if you've been watching the Beholder videos, a prolific contributor to this fanzine, all kinds of things, right? All kinds of different types of articles, etc. So Graham is planning to edit and compile a city scenario based on a trading center. This town will be called Helmenhale, and printed in conjunction with the Beholder in a format similar to the Glossary of Magic. So he had a grand design that he's going to do this. And I do these videos, or I'm talking about my collection of the Judges Guild, which is a fantastic producer of products for D&D back in the late 70s and early 80s. So here's a little shade. He says, Helmenhale, the great city of merchants, trading center of the world. This will be the greatest ever AD&D playing aid brought to you, far surpassing the city-state of the Invincible Overlord. I don't think it ever happened. I'm very curious to see If anyone knows Graham or has connections and has any information about this, I'd be really, really interested to learn more about it. But needless to say, and I've talked about this in those Judges Guild videos, the City State of the Invincible Overlord, arguably the best product of that type ever created. Just really, really good. Okay, then we have some charts here for Traveler. He wants you to roll D100 and determine basically what your family, your parents did, and then you would be automatically able to learn a little bit about that trade if you desire to do that. Here's some reviews of new products. Timetripper from SPI. In the Labyrinth, that's from Metagaming. DragonQuest, SPI's first real attempt at a role-playing game, and then Ace of Spades, which, as they say, is not an RPG at all, but it's a music album. But he says lots of people at Games Day were wearing Motorhead's t-shirts that advertise Motorhead's latest album, and he likes it and says if you like that kind of metal music, you definitely should go get this and check it out. So, Magic Jar, new magic items. Love this stuff. This is Martin Henningson. So the first one is the Ring of Insults. It's a ring of protection +2, but it will send telepathic insults to any evil aligned character nearby, basically stirring up trouble. Whenever you get within 50 feet of them, it'll do it through walls and doors as well, and just really make them angry. I'm not sure if they know where the insults are coming from specifically, but if they encounter your players very soon thereafter, they're likely to be in a foul mood. Then the Ring of Sweet Dreams allows your magic user to cast a friend's, or allows anyone who wears it to cast the magic user spell Friends once a day. Unfortunately, once you go to sleep at night to rest, you will never wake up until someone casts Remove Curse and figures out how to get the ring off of your finger. And then there is Ulfr's Rabid Sword. It's a short sword +2. Has a word engraved on it, Wolf, and like wolf, I guess. And if you say that out loud, you summon this rabid dog. And if whoever the sword is pointed at when the dog appears, it will attack without fail, and until you say Wolf again, and then he disappears. And once he defeats the first person, he'll go to the next person you point at, etc. And he'll just keep attacking people until the dog is killed. He eats the person who owns the sword because he's the only one left, or you say the word again and the dog disappears. Next, we have an article. I assume this is Mike Stoner. It's not, no authors listed. That usually means it's Mike. And this is a discussion on light. And says oftentimes, the DM doesn't enforce this, but really, like, a lot of light should be an important part of your campaign. Obviously, when you go in dungeons, those are going to be pitch black. There's no electricity. There's no light bulbs. I think it was, I can't remember if it was Don Turnbull or one of the other guys who writes a lot in the early days, who said he put, basically, because he didn't like dealing with light, and he basically strung up these magic light bulbs through all his dungeons so that people could see, just to get rid of that issue. But in any event, most people don't do that, and you need to keep track of your lanterns or your torches or whatever. And he goes through and talks about what the rules say about infravision. He points out that most monsters' infravision is twice the distance of elves or dwarves or whatever. And so the monsters, he says, DMs need to remember this, which is a good tip. Monsters are always going to see the party with infravision before the party could see the monsters, unless they're unintelligent and they're not paying any attention. So keep that in mind. And then, of course, remember that the common thing where you send one party member forward, the monsters are probably going to see and be able to lay a trap, because they'll see your elf or your dwarf, probably your elf you send forward, or halfling. And of course, the DM might consider penalizing them by having ambushes set up and basically heavily attacking that character, which will be the last time he or she will want to get out in front of the party, right? And here's a little postscript, which is an excellent idea, I think, which for a new spell that basically clouds or hides the body heat you put off. And so you could cast that on a friendly party member, and then that person basically becomes invisible to infravision, only to infravision, right? So it could be a lower level spell. But that would be a great spell to use to mask, whoever your scout's going to be. Okay, here's our Christmas dungeon by Graham Staplehurst. This thing is silly on purpose. It's themed around the 12 days of Christmas, partridge in a pear tree and 5 golden rings and all that. And here's the dungeon. Just supposed to be silly, something to play. He also has some, quote unquote, new monsters that you could have and use for that. We've got the turtle doves, which are part turtle, part dove. The giant swans, the Hiabani, which is a bull-bodied centaur. He also has the Elenoin, which is a hermaphrodite woman with flaming orange hair and huge nails they use to scratch you. So there you go. This is their update on their home campaign. Remember, they're playing in the world of the Invincible Overlord, but it's sort of just morphed into just being their home campaign now. That you can't even tell you're in that world. And a couple of issues ago, Guy Duke had this adventure, and these guys in the home campaign are playing their way through it. And this is just a one-page summary. They're hiding. They hear some of the orcs nearby talking, and getting maybe a little bit more background information about what they're about to encounter, and then they're going to head forward. But that's the end. So not much happens in this one. So the half-sylph, like half-elves, born of a human parent and a sylph parent, they have different level limitations. I think they gain some magic resistance. So they have some spell-like abilities that they can use in addition to their normal class-based abilities. Get some bonuses for if they're going to be a thief, because they tend to have a high intelligence and dexterity. Get a bonus for that. They have their stats adjusted down for strength and constitution. So then we have monster summoning. These are their monsters, and they have the Blob, which is I think good design. It's the new addition to the ooze/slime family, and its special thing is that any attack on the Blob just basically splits it, right? And so when you attack it with a sword or whatever, you just lop off a piece of it. It doesn't actually take any damage until you've lopped it enough times that each little piece only has 1 hit point, and then when you hit that one, it'll die. So it's going to be really, really hard to do. And what it does is just basically roll over top of your character and exude an acid that does damage. And then we have the Draw. It resembles a giant tortoise whose neck is longer than normal, and the shell shimmers and reflects many different colors, and basically they can bite you. They do hate magic, and they will destroy any magic thing that they hit, like if they hit your armor, but also any magic item used that hits them will lose its enchantment as well. And so they basically go around draining the magic from things. Now, the offset to that in their design is when you actually kill this thing, all that, I guess they've absorbed that enchantment, and it all goes back to the original magic item if you actually kill it. But if they escape, then you're going to be permanently left without your magic items. Okay, so then we have our last article, DM's Delight. This is from Outside Folks, and we've got some 3 new monsters and 2 new spells. So first we have the Waffle Bird. It looks like a large magpie, only about 2 feet, and they will befriend you for a short period of time to give you help if you're good aligned. They'll beak you for D4, and they'll scratch you for 2D4, 1 for each talon. That seems like a lot of damage for a bird that's this size, but in any event, that is the Waffle Bird. Then we have the Tayuupri. I'm not sure if that's supposed to have some funky pronunciation or not. But these are little creatures, 3 feet tall, that love to mine gold. It says they've been put out of work because their mine was empty of gold, and now they wander around looking for gold. They can sense it if they get close to it. They'll try to bargain for it. They'll try to steal it, or they'll come back and try and kill you and take it. That's basically it. Little gold-obsessed creatures. And then finally, we have this thing called the Kantalo, and 10 foot tall. And here's what's funny about it. It's supposed to have a 17 to 18 charisma. You look at that drawing, and I wouldn't have guessed that, right? It also has an 1897 strength, and so it does a lot of damage if it attacks you. He basically wanders around the world trying to stay uninvolved. But if you attack him, you say something nice about this creature, you comment on the weather or your latest adventure around it, it will just instantly go crazy for whatever reason and attack you. And then once it attacks you, it'll try and leave again. It has a 10% chance to drain the enchantment from any magic weapon that hits it. So there you go. Monsters are not great. The new spells I do like. So the first one is a magic user spell. They have it at 4th level. Seems probably too high, but it's called Rot, and it'll rot anything unless it makes a saving throw. So it could rot some wood. It could rot, meaning rust metal. And basically it's just a way to damage something. Obviously, you could use it in lots of creative ways, either against opponents or maybe to let yourself get, break some bars or get in through a door or something like that. And then finally, this one is crazy but fun, Animate Dung. And this spell allows you to animate offal and also control it. So you can make a pile of poo, chase somebody around, jump up on top of them. It said the DM should feel free to allow that to be full of some type of parasites, viruses, diseases, whatever, and so that you get some secondary effects from it. And obviously, in addition to the obvious effect that happens from getting covered up in all kinds of stinky. Whoops, here's some art. Alexander Self does this little comic called Folly the Magic User, and the dragon breathes and it says, anyone for toast. They're all like there with something they're trying to cook, like marshmallows or Spam or something. And then we'll just take a look here at some of the artwork at the end, get myself out of the way. I don't know who has this little sturge. I love it a lot. It's very sort of comic looking, but really cool. And then we've got Alexander Self has drawn this creature. I think this reminds me of something that was in an earlier issue with the sort of bat-like wings and a little stinger tail. Really, really good art. I like it. And then we've got articles or some art here from John. I think it's Jonathan White. He's got some space guy with a laser gun. He's got this skull with the candle, and he's got this guy getting shot by a laser gun over here on the right. I really like the one in the middle. It inspires me to want to create a magic item here, right? This candle, when you light it, it's enchanted, and maybe it casts some type of cleric spell, right? This seems like it will allow you to commune with some type of a spirit. So anyway, somebody had an article in one of these fanzines that involved enchantments that were put into candles for clerics usually, and that when they burn, then the spell power is released. Anyway, I like that idea quite a bit. I think this AS is Alexander Self again. This is a demon-like creature here on the left, and then John White's got this, I would say, demon here on the right, surrounded by flames. It might be supposed to be something else, I'm not really sure, but in any event, that's some good art. And then finally, from the silly Christmas adventure, you have I think it's 7 swans a swimming, and so these giant swans are one of the encounters in that adventure. So here's our rear cover, and that is it for the Beholder number 21, the December or Christmas edition of the fanzine. It'll be back in 1981 for 4 more issues from these guys, and then a few more issues from the subsequent publishers. Hope you guys are having a great Friday. Hope you have a great weekend. Until next time, my friends, keep rolling 20.